Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the formal part of the Author's Night, where we get to ask questions of Peter. You've seen and heard a lot about his life, but let's try to be specific about the book. There is coffee and tea over to the side there, and help yourself. So, is there anybody in this room that does not have a personal story about Peter?
Dennis,
I find it hard to believe that.
I don't want to cut into your agenda, but
Yes.
I just wanted, and I'm looking at my wonderful brother Sam. A couple of times you said to me, "What happened, Peter?" So in that little video that we just played, there's 65 years of our life, my life, that just went in 10 seconds. So when you say that to me next time, that's how quick life can move, right? Let's just be blessed that we're still here.
Exactly.
That's all. Now you can continue. Go ahead.
The last time I tried to do an interview like this was with James Woods. And I had prepared for 2 or 3 days questions. I had all these questions of James Woods. And he looked over, he says, "What do you got there?" And I said, "Those are my questions." He took it and he literally threw it off the stage. But if you were there with James Woods that night, you knew, you asked him one question, he talked for 20 minutes. So,
I know.
so that's what you have to beat.
Okay.
All right, so let's start with, what was your reason for writing this book?
Well, our friend Charlie Agro is here. He was introduced earlier. Quickly, he said, "You know, Peter, you've had a fun life. You should write a book." And I laughed at him. And I said, "Charlie, please, I'm going to write a book. Are you kidding me?" He said, "No." He said, it shouldn't be, because your granddaughter at that time, it was my youngest, Evangeline. He said, "They'll never know you. Your grandchildren will never really understand, other than the old stories. Oh, no, one day, but." And she said she should have something that your grandkids can keep. And anyway, I still ignored it. Then I started to think about it, and I said, "You know what, I have had a fun life. Met a lot of people with Carmen, and Charlie was right, maybe doing a book for my grandkids, not so much, everybody knows me, my brothers, my friends." But I thought about it, and next time I saw Charlie, I said, "Charlie, I'll take you up on it. I think I want to do it." It was right at the start of the pandemic, so it was a good project to start.
Way to go, Charlie. It was good for you to encourage Peter. We're really glad that you did it. We've gone through the book. I have some questions I'd like to ask, but I want to ask one first that my wife would like to ask you.
Okay.
On page 99,
Yeah.
Peter talks about Bill Clinton coming, and Peter writes that one of Bill Clinton's assistants looked like Monica Lewinsky. You know, that girl that gave Bill Clinton a lot of trouble. So my wife would like to know, why isn't it Bill Clinton who caused all the trouble?
So I told you earlier, that's one little comment that I probably, looking back, I shouldn't have made.
There you go.
You can tell, Liz, that, the men are probably more to blame than the ladies, so
There you go.
there's my answer to your wife.
Okay, so can I get home tonight? Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. Question, how did your mother's gift of kindness influence your personal and professional life?
Well, they don't make people like my mom no more. She was, never had a bad word to say about anybody, was always kind. She protected us like, we could have done some bad things, but she was there. So I think it's a little bit in our DNA, that, why I loved, and I said this to JC, I just love kind people. And my mom was, "Mom, I miss you, I know you're up there." She was just that kind of a woman that just I loved her.
I understand that, thank you. Working with Sam, I heard lots of stories about your mother as well, and one story that Sam used to tell, I know very little Italian, so don't jump all over me, Paticaria. I know my Italian's not good, but L'occhio di patron and grosso la cavallo.
Okay, if you're gonna
Was I
say
close?
it,
Almost was it?
not even
See?
close. L'occhio del padrone ingrassi il
Ingrassi la
cavallo.
cavallo.
You tried it, but I give you 8 for effort.
All right. So I learned it from Sam, now working with Peter and then with PJ. In fact, in a business discussion we had in the last day or two, we talked about the eye of the owner keeps the business fresh and successful. And we always talked about your mother and put that lesson, and I can tell you that it's into the 3rd generation now of the Mercanti family. So I don't think your mother will ever be forgotten.
Well, you know what, Dennis? My mom wasn't, she was a stay-at-home mom. She worked when we first came from Italy. She was always cooking, but you know, in an uncanny way, she always asked us, she certainly did with me, how's business, how's this, how's your sales, how's your cost, are you making a profit? You know, she did this, and to me, I was just literally simply always amazed that she had just an incredible way of, you know, from a business sense, keeping us on our toes. Keep your eyes on everything, don't ever, you know, don't trust people all the time, you gotta trust them, but be careful. Like, she was just a phenomenal mom.
Good, thank you. Moving on to another topic from your book, you talk about forgiveness and redemption in your book. So how has your faith played an important part of your life?
Well,
I get a
I
dollar
look
every
at my
time he
family,
cries.
I look at my family, Dennis. I think, you know, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody at some point in their life will make a mistake. I certainly am no exception, but the love of family, faith in God, can keep those mistakes on the back burner and allow you to go forward. And I'm just grateful for my faith, for the God to have kept me whole with my family, and I'm blessed. And anybody makes a mistake, move forward, but have your family support. You will never go wrong.
I remember when you were going through that, you started to go to Mass once again out in Ancaster. And you remember you used to tell me about the first thing you did at Mass?
I would always, in church, you pray, Dennis.
I know, but what's the first prayer that you usually do at Mass?
Our Father.
No. You ask, wrong Mass. You used to tell me that you used to love to go to Mass because the first thing you do was you ask for forgiveness.
Oh.
Right? You remember?
Yes, yes.
Just so you know, Peter Tassi, half the stories in the book I had to remind Peter. All right.
Cool.
So what was the best and worst business decision you ever made?
The best and worst?
Yeah, the circus was the worst?
You know what? You were supposed to,
Let you answer, sure.
yeah, but
I've been trying to be in
you know
control.
what, Dennis? Every businessman always thinks their idea is great, and you know, you get pretty aggressive trying to pursue it. The circus was certainly one of them, although going to Russia, meeting the Russians that they're tough to do business with, bringing 40 horses from Moscow into Niagara Parks Commission, dealing with 40 Russian entertainers. Ask me would I do it again? No. But you learn, you know, it was fun, it was a memory to say I brought a circus. Cirque Niagara was a great show, but no, I wouldn't do it again.
So what was the best thing?
Best thing I have to say is Carmen's. Carmen's probably, to this day, And it wasn't just the building of the building, it was to see a transition into my beautiful family with my two blessed sons and daughter now. It's just great to see that family transition to the business.
So making that decision, I remember Councillor Henry Merling was quite helpful having you find land at this part of the mountain. How many years did they promise you that they were going to build the link to Carmen?
Wow, Dennis, you're really going back, but Henry, my son-in-law Chip Mullis and I always thank Henry because Henry was always ahead of his time. The politics in Hamilton, there are no councillors in the room, so, but without Henry, our life, and Henry, again, I thank you all the time. Dealing with politics was always difficult. Anybody that's walked in City Hall dealt with City Hall. And with Henry, we became close friends, close family friends, that he was just like a magician that and I wouldn't even want to bother him because, you know, how often do you go to, but he thought, what's wrong? Well, you know what, Henry, I'm trying to build this hall. Anyway, Henry just cut through all the red tape there was and just made things happen like that for us. So I'm grateful, but those things today, they don't exist. I mean, you have to go through the grind of it.
So you built the hall here 20 years before the link and the Red Hill were finally completed.
Yes, I mean, this was all farmland. When Carmen's first, that's 35 years ago. This side of the city and the mountain has just developed like crazy, as we've all can see.
So the opening of the Red Hill was the weekend that we brought Michael Douglas to Hamilton.
Right.
And in your book, you talk about some of the personalities that we've entertained. Do you remember any stories about Michael?
He didn't want to wear a poppy for some reason. I don't know. He didn't want to wear a poppy. He was a bit, no, not standoffish, but simply stated he was at that time a little bit of a pain in the ass.
If you remember, it was Michael Douglas's first time speaking in public as a representative of United Nations. And you know, we'd known him as a TV actor and he was famous in movies, but it was the first time he had ever spoken to a live audience.
Yeah.
And he brought his own audio-visual guy from New York to set it all up, and he came early and he rehearsed, and he had all of the buttons in his pocket to control the sound, and somehow during the dinner, he put it on mute. And so we introduced him and he was about to talk, and there was no sound, but he was able to carry the speech without any of the music or the sound from the video. That's what I remember about him. He was so nervous to speak in public, and with all of the careful planning, he muted his own story. That's what I remember about Michael. You talked about Sylvester Stallone. He appeared one night, and the next morning we had breakfast.
Yep, yeah.
Just you and I and him. And before Peter got there, it was a very nice, he loved Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
He loved the people he met the night before, and he was so calm. And then you came along, and I remember he had a 6-egg omelet,
Yeah.
right? And Peter said to him, "So what do you think of this guy, Barack Obama?" And this nice guy that we had been with for a day and a half turned into another Hulk.
Yeah.
He could not control himself. That's when I first saw the American rage around politics. And so now, when the American stars come up, we don't talk politics because you never know what side they're going to be on. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, but you know, despite that, Dennis, he was my favorite guy. He was cool. He was more interested in my life story and the business. He was quite fascinated by it. He said, "Peter, you got to come to California." He gave me his number. I never did call him because he had gotten into some businesses that I guess didn't go so well for him, but he was just a warm guy. And when he took it, this is in the morning, he was like, are you kidding me? 65 years old, it was built like a 25-year-old bodybuilder, and I was just fascinated. He's, of all the ones, he was my favorite.
So in your book, you also talk about some of your staff.
Yep.
Tell us about some of the staff members that you've come to admire and appreciate all these years.
One that is at the top of my head was a lady by the name of Carla Sensic. Carla was the one that I give credit to for giving us a service standard. She was just the ultimate professional. Our staff completely respected her. She was a mentor to other people, to our staff, and we've been blessed. I mean, you know, after 35 years of business, some staff come, some staff go, but overall, I think Carla set a standard for us that to this day we still follow. I know that PJ and Joey were trained by her. Joey's one of the pictures was serving Bill Clinton, and Carla was there too. But she inspired me. She was just a class act employee, and when I look at a person like her, who doing her job, she excelled. She was the ultimate, and I admire people that even though they're a service supervisor, she went above and beyond that. I say, I wish we had more people like Carla. So, I mean, there have been in my life some incredible employees that to this day I remember, and I always tried where I could take a personal, because we had people working at Carmen's that were far smarter than the job that they were doing. You know, and some of them, one in particular, a gentleman that came from Kosovo, I think, came in, you know, handsome man, and I asked him, you know, what did you do in your country? He looked too good carrying a tray of food. And he said, well, I did refrigeration. I said, you know, and I said, I'm gonna talk to you, make a long story very short. I embraced this guy. I asked him to go back to Mohawk College that we paid for, go get because he wasn't qualified in Canada. He went, got his degree, got certified. We started a refrigeration company together, Carmen's being the first account, right? And to this day, Kojo owns his own company. He's got several employees and just doing fantastic. So that made me feel good to say we took a waiter. And those stories, there's quite a few. It just, you know, to me, it's not just about the job. If you see someone that has got potential, help that person try to reach their potential. I was sad to lose him as an employee, but happier for him to see how he grew. So
I'm sure he's one of many, many new immigrants that you hired, that you gave them their first job, you gave them support, and they're doing well because of your support of them.
Well, we were immigrants, so I have a soft spot for anybody that comes. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are, you know, coming to a new country and knowing what they're going through, what we went through. I just have a want to try and help where I can and if I can.
So speaking of new immigrants, I just want to go back to a story. Where did you get the name One Punch Pete?
You know what, Dennis? These are trick questions.
I told you.
Look at me, all 5'4" and 1/4 inch. When you're growing up in Hamilton in North End, again, my brother Sam could attest to that. You know, and I don't want to swear, but pardon my French, but hey, you fucking wop, the DP, why don't you go back to your fucking spaghetti land? And you hear all this.
Is there any HR people here?
No, but you're asking me, I'm gonna answer. So, you know, we had to learn to fight.
Right.
We had to learn to fight. And, you know, after a few fights, I actually enjoyed it. especially after I'm saying, gee, on my side, I just, you know, one punch beat. I had a good knack for one punch, I could knock you out. So kind of gave me a bit of an ego boost at that time. Now I wouldn't try it, but back then, you know what, as new immigrants getting back, we had to survive. I mean, and so we learned to fight, and we did okay.
About 4 or 5 years ago, PJ took Carmen's group corporate office downtown, the corner of King and James.
Yeah.
And he told a story that night when he opened it, talking about yours and Sam's and Morris's beginnings on that corner.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about what happened at King and James?
So part of our, you know, at about, I guess, 11th, 12th brother, we started selling newspapers. We did everything we could to hustle, and we started selling newspaper. At that time, the Spectator was right at the corner of King and Catherine, I believe. So we used to buy our papers there, to buy them, and then we would hustle along King Street and yell out, Spectator, spec, you know. So the ones that got at that corner first sold the most papers. But at a certain time, a lot of the corners were taken. But we figured out if we got there first, and we did, we manipulated how we bought more papers, and who bought more papers got to the front. So we would get our paper, scoot down and take over King and James. And that we got there, first thing I heard, hey, you effing wop, get off, that's my block, or my corner. We would just, me, Sam Morris, would just beat him up and you get off.
So what did you do with the money from selling the Spectator?
Well, my wonderful brother Sam, he was always, Samuel, I always said, and I say this with all respect to Jewish people, it's a good Jewish name. But Sam he was at school in tech class, but he made a little box where he would actually collect our money, put it in that box, and he would make sure I gave him all the coins, and he was that started to save our money. And it was that little bit that we saved that we used to see our mother literally on her knees shining the floor, and we bought her a floor polisher at that time, and that's how all that started.
Good story. Okay. So we've talked about celebrities, we've talked about staff, we've talked about your family. Excuse me. So, from reading your book, we get the impression that you lived a full and rich life. Do you have any regrets? But then again.
You know what? Great song Frank Sinatra wrote there, Dennis. But regrets? I don't think I have many regrets other than I wish that I had have been the man I am today a long time ago, because I would have just been a happier person. I think life throws us some curveballs. Sometimes we get on thin ice, and feeling how I feel today, I wish I would have felt that way years ago. I just would have lived a happier life.
There's an old saying, too soon you get old, too late you get smart.
Well, hopefully, you know, it's, as a PJ, as I've always said, it's not about how you start the race, it's how you end your race. And life is not a race, but, you know, as long as I get to hopefully enjoy a few more years being as wise as I am today and happy as I am today, I look forward to it.
So we can't have a discussion, and there's a little story in the book about a certain trip to Milwaukee for Festitalia. Do you remember going?
You want me to share that
No,
with the
no,
people?
I'm going to tell my side of the story. You go ahead and tell it.
No, I'll tell your side of the story, because I'm the one that witnessed it. So, I had met Dennis, and it was during Festitalia that we went, Milwaukee has a big,
Festitalia.
a big Italian festival. And so we decided, and God rest his soul, Frank Bernardis, who was a big advocate of Festitalia, always supported it. And he was, and just to quickly talk about Frank, he was the first one that he was at CH when CH television was really growing back in the late 50s. So we became friends. Anyway, Dennis or Frank suggested, Peter, come with us, take a trip to Milwaukee. I said, sure, we were gonna fly down. So we get to the airport, and this fellow next to me sat down right across, and Frank and I were sitting here, and all of a sudden, the plane announced, we're gonna take off soon, and I looked, and there was no Dennis, but he was there. And I said, Frank, what the hell happened to Dennis? So I went to the front, I said, look, there was a friend of mine sitting there. He's not here now, and like, what are we gonna do? He said, well, maybe he's in the washroom. We checked the why he wasn't there, and the plane took off, no Dennis. And I'm like, what happened? So I wish his wife Liz was here. This is a...
She's here.
Where is she? Oh, there you are. And I remember that I said, as soon as we boarded, I was worried for Dennis. I called and I said, Liz, if I recall, this is many years ago. She said, oh, didn't he tell you? Tell us what? She said, he has a fear of flying. I said, what? Fear of flying? Like, why did he get on the frickin' plane? He had a fear of flying. Anyway, Frank and I we landed, went to the conference and the convention, and we get back to our space, to our room, and I see Dennis walking. It's like, he looked like he'd been through turbulent hurricanes and this. I said, what the hell happened to you? To get to Milwaukee, I give him credit, to get rid of his fear of flying, he took like 4 different puddle jump flights to end up in Milwaukee. So, but that was you broke your fear of flying.
Right. Now, that wasn't the story I was going to tell.
I told the truth.
Well, the other part of the truth was, as we were boarding the plane, Peter was traveling on his Italian passport.
Right, yeah.
No, so Frank and I went through the Canadian customs. You went somewhere else. The whole plane is waiting for Peter. It wouldn't go until Peter was still in customs. And we finally got him. He was talking to the customs guard about her upcoming wedding. So that's traveling with Peter. Once I finally did make it to Milwaukee,
Yeah.
there was an opening ceremonies and the police chief spoke of Chicago or Milwaukee? Milwaukee. And he said, welcome to Milwaukee, welcome to the Italians. All of the police here welcome you. And if you see any policemen around here, you tell them that the chief says you've done a great job. So, like, you don't tell Peter what to say to people because he'll do it. For the next 3 days, every cop we saw, Peter would stop the taxi, would get out. The chief says you're doing a great job. Is that true?
Yes, very
Yes,
true.
yes. He got a ride on a motorcycle. So, anyway, that was my side of the Milwaukee trip. I wanted to tell my side. So earlier tonight, I don't know, was Charlie talked about this theory that you have about who are better. One of the best stories in the book is about how Peter thinks who are better business people, the Italians or our friends, the Jewish people.
Yeah.
So why do you think Italians are better?
Okay. Actually, Anthony Macaluso came
Was it
up.
Anthony? Okay.
All right. I love our Jewish friends. There's no question about it. But at that time in we lived on Caroline Street, beside was Wilcox Playground. And beside Wilcox, that we hung out in the summer. Right beside Wilcox's big fence, it was attached to a scrapyard right next door. I hope the name comes back to me who owned it, but Sam Macaluso, Anthony and Michael's uncle, was always a kind of a creative guy, and we were there, and he said, you know, he saw car engines stacked on top, like above the fence. He said to me, Peter, I think if I made a winch, and he liked making things, he said, we could pull those car engines down, and then we'll just put them, I'll make a nice buggy, and we'll go back and sell them to the scrapyard, right? This is, you know, a wonderful story, memory that I have. I said, Sam, he said, if I make the winch, will you climb up the fence to wrap it around? I said, sure. And, you know, a couple of days later, he made the winch. Oh, he made the winch. He said, okay, climb up. Playground was closed. We had a little bit of daylight left. He said, climb up because it's gonna get dark. I climbed up. I wrapped whatever he had made for me to wrap around the engine. I wrapped it around. He said, stay up there because we're gonna get a few. He got one down and threw me again, and I wrapped, so we took 3 engines down, okay? I put them on the buggy, and the next morning, when the scrapyard opened, we took these engines into the scrapyard, and like we got, whatever, $2 for 3 engines. But what did they do? They took those same engines and put them on the top again. So I think we stole them 3 or 4 times before the scrapyard way guy, the checker, would say, hey, haven't you guys been here before? So when I became a member at the Beverly Golf and Country Club, again, they were it was a predominantly Jewish club, and it was the time when the Perkazis and, you know, all that debacle with the gentleman that used to go.
Waxman.
Well, yeah, Waxman, there was another one, Intermedco.
Yeah.
But anyway, they said, Peter, sit down, we have a question for you. So here I am surrounded by 10 Jewish gentlemen, and they threw the question, hey Peter, who do you think are smarter? Italians or Jewish? I said, you're putting me in a really difficult situation, gentlemen, but then I told them my scrapyard story and just so I said, you figure it out.
Okay, let's, PJ talked about some of the wedding stories. Tell us about, there's one particular husband and wife were there.
You know what, Dennis, that honestly, if I ever have, the weddings were probably the funnest part of my life at Carmen's, but having met all of these brides and grooms and you know, doing our first gay wedding, then our first lesbian wedding, it really gave me just a lifetime of wonderful memories. But when we first opened Carmen's, predominantly, we were doing Italian weddings. It was an Italian hall, and I would I loved doing the sales appointments with the Italians because at that time I spoke much better Italian than today, but I remember one specific, and I have to kind of act this out. And usually at the Italian weddings, the brides and grooms have nothing to say because the parents pay the bill. You just be quiet and sit. That's the way it used to be. It's not that way anymore, but so in this particular, it was the mother of the bride doing all the talking. She would, you know, everybody else kind of be quiet. She was telling me everything. So finally, when I thought the appointment was over, I would say, so her husband, piped up a bit and said, "You finish it?" And she, because he had not said anything, she just upped her eyes, she goes, "Yeah, I'm a finisher, why?" He said, "Well, you say you speak, and now it's my turn to speak." And so she was like upset and a bit surprised that he spoke. So he told me, "I don't like this pasta you pick because, you know, it's the sauce is gonna maybe get it here, and I don't like the antipasto." So here he was complaining about all the choices she had made. Okay, and at one point she gets up, she walks over to him. I thought, you know, Italians can get a little snappy at times. She was gonna smack him or something. So she walks over and she goes, you gotta treat things in. Treat, put his, like your finger right in. He goes, "What? You gotta show up, you gotta shut up, and you gotta pay up." So, that one, there are countless stories like that, but that one just kind of stuck in my head.
Just a couple more. You and I went to visit Angelo Mosca, who's a good friend of yours.
Yeah.
Pete is one of the few guys in Hamilton who volunteered to arm wrestle with Angelo and won. We're not going to tell that story. We're going
You
to
just did.
We went to see Angelo, who's at McCastle Lodge.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun seeing him. He just looked up at me and he said, where are they? Faccia Brute, he used to say. Every time he saw, "Hey, you Faccia Brute, what are you doing here?" I said, "I brought Peter." He says, "Okay, come in." But the story with Brides and Grooms, as we were leaving, the executive director of McCastle Lodge stops us on the way out. She said, "Peter, you did my wedding, and now you're doing my daughter's wedding."
Yeah.
How many times has that happened to you?
A lot of times.
You got to be into 3 generations in Hamilton.
So yes, and that is one of the perhaps greatest blessings of that business that, you know, I'm getting, especially on quite a few that, one just last week that this guy started the successful car dealership, yes, on Upper James. And the daughter, I came in, I had to go in there on behalf of somebody else. And I'm looking at pictures up on her office. And I said, "Gee, who's that gentleman?" They said, "That's my father." He said, "Yes, you did his wedding 31 years ago at Carmen." So I'm getting a lot of second generations, and that truly is humbling to know that Carmen's is still relevant today to some people. So that's been a fun part of that business.
All right, great, thank you. I'm just going to wrap this up with one little section, then we'll take a couple of questions. So you provide the reader with a great leadership and business model in your book. JC refers to the business part. What would you say to a young person as to the one key element in being successful in business?
Never give up, have a plan. You get knocked down, get up. Today, Dennis, I don't think any business is easy, but if you you believe in a challenge, all businesses are challenged, I don't care what type. Just have a determination to never give up. Keep fighting. You get knocked down, get up, and just have a great attitude, and be able to provide a service or a product that people want to buy. If nobody wants to buy it, well, you can't do any business.
Yeah, in your business model, you talk about filling gaps.
Yes, of course. You know, filling a gap, in my opinion, is probably, especially when everything in this day and age has already been thought of, filling a gap is more difficult. But if you find that there's a scene that in the food industry now, it's happening every day. Everybody, Tim Hortons challenging McDonald's. Just look at the ads on TV. Everybody trying to come up with what somebody else hasn't come up with. That's an ongoing challenge. I admire PJ because right now trying to reinvent what Carmen's has been is perhaps the biggest challenge, but I have complete faith that PJ and Joey and our team at Carmen's will figure that out. But finding the gap that hasn't been found, that is where the success of a new business now could come in. And a work ethic like my mom's. Just never give up.
It's a good place to end this. We started with your mom. Let's end with your mom there. We got time for 1 or 2 questions. Paul Vaccarello, surely you've got a question. I wanna ask
Oh
you.
my God.
I can't think of one right now.
You won the drama award.
Peter answered the question. Ask Peter about his football career.
Okay.
Otto, that's not a fair question, but I know I'm not very tall, but I did play football. And here's an opportune time to speak on our brother Morris, who passed away on us. You know, the guys at Cathedral High School that was famous for its football program, you know, used to tell me that my brother Morris would literally, even though he wasn't that tall, he was like a piece of cement that he would run into you, never mind you trying to tackle him. I really didn't have much of a football career, Otto, but I did love it because I loved knocking big guys down. So, you know, that was just my little story on football.
So why don't I let you finish with this?
Okay, thank you. I guess, thanks, Dennis. I guess before I start my thank yous to several people here, I just want to say that I am humbled, I'm grateful, and blessed by everyone who is here tonight. I'm touched beyond words, and my little heart here will be smiling for a long, long time. I want to start off by saying thanks to Carmen's for a wonderful evening. Cosetta, if you're back there, there's a story I can tell about that wonderful lady. Chef Mike from Bocce and the rest of the service staff, thank you for a great job. I'd like to start my thank yous from what I call my book team. My book team, when this all started, I assembled a bit of a team. Charlie Agro was the one that, Charlie, I know you're there. Truly thank you for, it was Charlie that helped start this. And he, because we talked about lasagna, was the one that came up with the title. It all started with lasagna. Charlie, thank you. Peter Tassi. When I had heard of Peter Tassi, he's a well-known counselor at the high schools, but I'd never really knew him. And Charlie asked Peter Tassi to, because Peter in his own right has written a whole bunch of books that I didn't know of. And so to me, if it wasn't for Charlie and Peter and these two, I would never have attempted this book, not a chance. So to both of you out there, thank you so very much. Dennis Concordia. Dennis and I go back almost 40, maybe more than 40 years. And Dennis, I can say publicly, thank you for your great friendship, for your great advice to this day, to still being a part of PJ and helping them. You have been a true blessing in my life. And to JC Campos, who came up here. I call him my Portuguese prince and my right hand at Mama Yolanda's, JC, you're beautiful. To my publicist, she's hiding back there. This was a lady that started working at Mama Yolanda's in the factory, and somehow JC said, you know, if we need somebody to help marketing, there's a girl, Mary Utley is her name, that she wants to get into marketing. Make a long story short, Mary, you've been a shining star throughout this whole process. I look forward to many more years with you as part of our future, and just keep up the unbelievable work ethic that you have. Sam Minetti, I know from the Charity of Hope. Throughout this process, Sam, you put so much effort into for this event, working with Mary and everybody else, and you are a true blessing to the Charity of Hope. To all my friends that are here, Paul and Gina Beccarello, not only is Paul a great neighbor of ours, but he's been a friend for a long time. And he's got the best head of hair. and Paul, you do have great hair. To Frank and Lynn Calabrese, Claudette Perry, whose wonderful husband, Tony, I know you're there, up there, Tony, would have loved to be here. I was going to compliment George Lamparski, because George is the one that started the Charity of Hope at the YMCA, but he's not here. But Andre Couture, your wonderful family has been friends of ours with all your brothers, and I just great people that the Couture family is. Pat the Carrier, my old great buddy, is here. Pat Mustacci. I know Pat's gone through some health issues, but Pat, you sure look good right now, I'll tell you. Good luck to you in the future. I don't know if they are here, the Leggett family, if anybody is here from them.
Over here.
Well, I want to tell you that your family has been in our community for so many years, and you are pillars of a wonderful community, and thank you for all the great memories we have had with the Leggett family. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, next I gotta thank is my wonderful family, starting off with Daniela and Chip, and just for all of you to know, this wonderful little building was built by Chip Mullis. Chip, I love you, and I know I say this and Daniela gets bored of it, but we live together, and there are many times that I love Chip much more than my own daughter. So again, she's not here, but PJ, I miss Diana not being here. Joey and Rachel, who again, they're away. My brother Sam, who to this day still is my mentor in many ways. To Ian and Lisa, and another person that I miss, I cry over, because we were so tight, my brother Morse. I know, brother, you're watching from up there along with many other of our friends, and the many great years you've given me as a brother, and to his wife Lynn. My sister Rose is a replica of my mother, and she cooks, I could never say this, every bit as good, and that sometimes better than my mom. So thank you, Rose and John Lascala, although he's not here, but his beautiful daughter's here, so even better. Kathy and Otto Morrison, thank you for being here. My wonderful grandchildren, 1, 2, 3, Marco, Francesco, and Nicholas. Thank you guys for being here to support Nono. You are wonderful young men. Just keep listening to your mother, father, and Nono, and you'll be great. The most important person I have to, and if I lose it a bit, I apologize, that I think is the most important person here tonight is my wife, Gabriella. I can tell you publicly, Gaby, that I've been blessed to have countless memorable, great memories in my life. But the two most important days, I think, in my life, without question, was the day I was born and the day that I met you. Those are two great days. You know, we played this song, it's one of my favorite songs, by the Temptations, that you are my sunshine on a cloudy day, my shelter when it rains, the oxygen that I need to breathe, and without you and your unwavering support, I would never have been able to accomplish the things I've been able to do in my life. Not only have you been my rock, but you have also been my guiding light to be a better man, a better father, better grandfather. And without you, none of that would have been possible. I thank God every day, every chance I get for everything that you are, everything you've done and provided me. Gabrielle, I love you now, and I promise you forever. I don't know what's going on next, Dennis.
We're going home.
Okay.
That, ladies and gentlemen, ends the formal part of the evening, Festitalia's Authors Night 2021. Thank you for joining us. Peter will sit at a side table somewhere, Charlie, where Charlie's got some books. Peter would be happy to personally sign a book for you. And maybe I didn't mention it earlier enough, but the proceeds from tonight's dinner and from the sale of Peter's book will be donated to the Charity of Hope. And to say a few words from the Charity of Hope, I'd like to invite their Executive Director, Sam Miniti, please. And I just want to tell you the values that are being represented tonight. This is a check from Festitalia that we normally give to the author as an honorarium. And I can tell you that Peter has already said that this honorarium will go to the Charity of Hope as well.
That's great, thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Charity of Hope. We have some board members here tonight. We have our founder, Sam Mercanti, here tonight. And the first time I went to go see Peter, I told Sam, I'm going to go see your brother. I'll be back in a short bit. And he said, I'll probably see you a lot later today. But we had very good conversations, and I just want to say that it's been a difficult year to fundraise with the pandemic. And your donations have been very important. And the donations that you've leveraged with people in this room and those that aren't here tonight have been very helpful for the Charity of Hope. So thank you for selecting us as the beneficiary. I do want to say that with the proceeds that we raise, our focus is on children and youth. So we provide breakfast programs, funding for breakfast programs, after school programs. We provide school supplies for needy children. We also provide special learning equipment for those that require it. So the funds raised tonight will go a long way, and I'm happy to announce that I'm pretty sure that as a result of tonight's donation and some that are forthcoming, we will probably be north of $10,000. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. How do I say good night in Italian?
Come on, Dennis.
A tavolo, tutto a tavolo, is that one? No? Is that the one? No.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte, everyone, and thank you for coming.